somewhere on the Earth, right now, while you're listening to this, a long way down. Below the soil, below the rock, below even the water table. In a room carved out under a mountain where the silence has been shielded from the sky itself, there sits a great tank of something held perfectly still, colder and quieter than almost anywhere in the universe. And it is being watched, ringed all the way round by patient electronic eyes that never look away, never blink, never rest, watching, waiting.
Waiting for one thing. A single faint flash of light, deep inside all that stillness. The tiny spark that would mean a speck of the dark matter drifted in out of the dark and just once brushed against something we can see. The stuff that outweighs everything you and I are made of, everything we've spent this season learning to name. Reaching into our world for the length of a heartbeat. That's what the eyes are for. That one flash. That one whisper out of the dark.
And here's the part that stops me cold. That flash might not come tonight. It might not come this year. It might not come in the entire working life of the person up there watching the screens. It might, genuinely, never come at all. And they know that. They sit the vigil anyway. Somebody is down there in the dark right now, keeping watch over a tank that may never once flicker, on the small chance that it might.
And that, I want us to sit still on this before we go anywhere else. That is what the edge of the known actually looks like. Not a shout down a corridor. Not a eureka. No lightning, no trumpet, no chalkboard covered in triumph. Just a patient human being keeping watch beside a tank buried under a mountain, waiting in the dark for an answer that may never arrive, and choosing to wait regardless. The frontier of physics isn't a fanfare, Alice. It's a vigil.
Now, last week you did something a little cruel to me. You took the most successful theory in the history of science, the one we'd spent this whole season building, brick by careful brick, and you walked me round the back of it and showed me the cracks. Gravity, missing altogether. Most of the matter in the universe, dark and unaccounted for. A fistful of numbers nobody can explain. And then you left me hanging on one question. So what do we do about it? And you smiled and said, next week. Well, it's next week.
It's next week, the last night of the season, and that tank in the dark is the beginning of my answer to you. Last week we laid the cracks bare, and I promised we wouldn't quietly paper over them. So tonight is what people are really doing about those cracks, right now, all over the world. How the hunt actually goes. And I'll warn you gently up front, it is nothing at all like what the films would have you believe.
Go on then. When you say the hunt for what? The dark matter waiting to flicker in that tank, or something bigger than that?
For all of it. For everything last week said we couldn't yet explain. And the searching happens in, call it, 3 broad ways. 3 completely different kinds of patience. There are the great machines that smash particles together. There are the buried detectors, like our tank, holding still for years in the quiet. And there are the great eyes turned up at the dark sky, reading the universe's own evidence. 3 ways of asking nature the same stubborn question. Let me take them one at a time, because each one is its own kind of beautiful.
Start me with the machines. The smashing. That's the one everybody's got a picture of, isn't it? The giant machine. The 2 beams of particles driven at each other. The enormous collision in the middle.
That's the one. And here's the idea living underneath the smashing, which almost nobody ever tells you, and it's lovely. When you drive 2 particles at each other hard enough and they collide, the sheer energy of that crash doesn't simply bounce away. It can freeze. It can turn into brand new matter, right there on the spot. Because energy and mass, it turns out, are 2 faces of a single coin. You can spend one to mint the other. So the harder you smash, the more energy you pour into that one tiny point, the heavier the things you can conjure out of it.
But if these heavy things are so hard to make, If you need a machine the size of a city to buy even one of them, how did the universe ever manage to make them in the first place?
That's the loveliest part of the idea. Right at the very beginning, the entire universe was that hot, hotter than any machine we could ever build. Everything there was came drenched in that much energy at once, so all the heavy, strange things existed for free, everywhere, all together. When we build a giant machine and smash particles head-on, we aren't inventing something unnatural. We're lighting one tiny spark of that opening blaze for a sliver of a heartbeat, just to see what tumbles out of it, the way it once tumbled out back then.
So, a bigger machine isn't really about seeing something smaller, it's about being able to afford something heavier. You save up more and more energy so you can pay for a particle that nature doesn't ordinarily keep lying around.
That's it. A bigger machine is simply a bigger purse. And the things we most want to buy are the expensive ones. The heavy, the rare, the strange, the particles that might be hiding just past the edge of what we've managed to afford so far. Maybe a piece of the dark matter is one of them, waiting to be minted. Maybe there's a hidden layer of heavy cousins to the particles we already know. We don't find out until we can pay for the collision that makes them, and then go sifting through the wreckage for something we've never once laid eyes on.
A bigger purse for a stranger particle.
And it's never quite big enough. Whatever you can afford, the thing you most want always seems to sit one coin past it.
And sift through the wreckage. That's not a person crouched over the debris with a magnifying glass, I take it.
Not quite. Picture instead photographing a fireworks finale, millions of times every second for years on end, and then teaching a machine to flag the one frame in a trillion that looks a little bit wrong, a little bit new. The collision itself is over in less time than you can say the word over. The waiting is all in the sifting. Years of it, mostly finding just what the theory told you you'd find, and hoping for the once that you don't.
And say it happens. Say the machine flags a frame that's genuinely new, some particle nobody has ever laid eyes on. That's the moment, surely. That's the eureka we started the night by saying doesn't happen.
You'd think so, and it's the very moment every one of those people dreams of. But it's also the moment where the patience bites down hardest, because one strange frame could always be a fluke, a trick of the numbers, a coincidence wearing the costume of a discovery. So you don't celebrate. You wait. You gather more of the same, and more still, until a fluke would be plain absurd, and only then do you let yourself believe it. Even the eureka, when it finally comes, arrives wrapped in years of quiet double-checking.
All right, that's the machines. The second way was those buried detectors. Our tank under the mountain. Tell me why you'd bury the thing at all. Why pile so much rock over the top of it?
Because the whisper we're straining to hear is so faint and so shy that almost anything at all would drown it out. Up here at the surface, the sky is raining down a constant sleet of particles, every second of every day, right now, through you, through the roof, through everything. Little bits and pieces made when things from deep space slam into the top of the air. Harmless to you, but that sleet would swamp our patient tank 1,000,000 times over. So we go down. We put a whole mountain between the tank and the sky. Rock and more rock, and the water table piled on top of that. A blanket thick enough to hush the noise of the entire sky, so that if one true whisper ever comes, we'll know it wasn't the din raining down from above.
And why would the dark matter only ever tap once, so gently? If there's so much of the stuff out there, why isn't the tank ringing like a struck bell?
Because whatever it turns out to be, it's a hopeless mixer. It sails through ordinary matter almost as freely as the ghost neutrino does. Straight through you, through the rock, through the tank itself, hardly ever pausing to touch a single thing. There's a great silent tide of it sweeping through that buried room every second, and out of all those countless passing specks, We're waiting for the one in some unimaginable number that happens to clip an atom on its way past. That's why the room has to be so impossibly quiet. We aren't listening for a bell. We're listening for one dropped pin in a cathedral, maybe once a year.
Once a year, and you'd have to be sure it wasn't a mouse.
A mouse, a truck rumbling by miles off, a fleck of rock doing what rock quietly does. Most of the craft is ruling out the ordinary.
A whole mountain, just to get one single room quiet enough. And then you fill that impossibly quiet room with what? What's actually sitting in the tank?
Something dense and still and endlessly watched. Held so cold and so calm that if a single passing speck of dark matter ever so much as nudged one atom inside it, that nudge would set off a tiny flash of light, and the eyes ringing the tank would catch it. That's the trick, start to finish. Build a place so quiet that one small bump would stand out like a shout in an empty church. And then wait for the bump. It might be a piece of the dark, or, the second quarry down there, it might be a passing ghost.
The ghost. That's the neutrino, isn't it? The one we met earlier this season. The particle that barely touches anything at all, that streams straight through the whole Earth without noticing it's there.
The very one. It pours through you, through the Earth, through all of it, by the trillion, almost never stopping to say hello. Those same buried detectors can sometimes catch one, the rarest, faintest little tap. And the neutrino is still a frontier all of its own, remember. It carries a mass so unimaginably tiny that nobody can say why it's that small. And it may even have had some quiet hand in one of the biggest puzzles there is. Why there's any matter here at all to make us out of, instead of a universe of nothing but light. So that tank in the dark waits for two kinds of whisper. The dark and the ghost.
Two mysteries, then, caught in the same net. That's economical, at least.
It is. And the ghost brings a gift all its own. A neutrino that reaches us has usually come from somewhere we could never otherwise set foot. The burning heart of a dying star. The deep engine of things we can't take apart and peer inside. It slips out carrying news that no light could ever bring us, because light gets trapped and turned back. And the ghost simply doesn't. So the same patient tank is really two instruments at once. One straining to hear the dark speak for the first time in history, and one quietly reading letters posted from places nothing else can reach.
And the third way, the great eyes on the dark sky. That's the opposite direction from a tank under a mountain, isn't it? Now you're looking out, up and out, instead of down.
Out and up, and as far back as light will let us look. Because the universe has been running its own grand experiment for far longer than we've existed to watch it. And it left the evidence lying around everywhere, if you have a patient enough eye to read it. We can't see the dark matter directly, no. But we can watch whole galaxies spin far too fast to hold themselves together, and yet somehow not fly apart. We can watch light from far away bend as it slides past some invisible weight out in the black. The sky is covered, corner to corner, in the fingerprints of the stuff. We simply can't yet see the hand that left them.
So you don't even have to catch a piece of the dark to know it's really there. You can read its shadow, written huge, across the sky.
That's the quiet power of the third way. And here is what makes all three worth doing at once. They're three completely different ways of cornering the same suspect. Make it fresh in a machine. Catch it red-handed in a buried tank. Or read the shadow it casts across the heavens. Not one of them, on its own, would ever be enough to convict. But if all three ever pointed at the same answer, the same weight, the same nature, the same shy stranger, that agreement is how we'd finally know, beyond all doubt, that we'd caught it. Until that day, we keep every net in the water at once.
3 nets, 1 fish.
3 nets, 1 fish, and it's slipped all 3 of them so far. But a fish that keeps dodging 3 different nets is one you learn an awful lot about, long before you ever landed.
So all 3 of them, the smashing, the burying, the watching, they've got one thing in common underneath, don't they? Underneath all the fireworks and the machinery. They're all, when you get right down to it, mostly just waiting.
Mostly waiting. That's the part the films will never show you. The frontier of physics is the most patient work there is. It's people building a room of extraordinary quiet, or a machine of extraordinary violence, or an eye of extraordinary care, and then sitting down beside it for years, mostly finding nothing at all, on the slim chance of one flicker that would change the story. The most thrilling work in the field is, when you get down to it, mostly waiting in the dark, and choosing to.
I have to say it, George. 12 weeks. 12 weeks you've walked me down through the layers of the world, quark by quark, force by force, one revelation a night. And the grand ending you've been building toward this whole time is a person sitting very still next to a bucket, hoping that's the finale. And then, mostly, we wait.
When you put it like that, yes, that's the finale. But hear what the waiting actually is. It isn't idleness, it's the most stubborn kind of hope there is. Every one of those people beside a tank has decided that the answer is worth sitting in the dark for, even if the answer never once comes to them in their own lifetime. That's a hard thing to sign up for. Years of your life, maybe, for a flash that may never arrive. And it might be the most human thing our whole species does. We sit up, in the dark, and we wait for the universe to tell us something true.
All right, I'll grant you, the waiting is noble. So let's talk about what they're actually waiting for. The biggest of last week's cracks, the dark matter. You keep calling it the stuff that outweighs everything we understand. Say it for me one more time, plainly, because it still refuses to sit right in my head.
It shouldn't sit right. It's one of the strangest true things we know. Take everything in the universe that we can name. Every star, every planet, every drifting cloud of gas, every particle in the roster we spent this season learning. Add the lot of it up, and it comes to only a small share of what's actually out there, pulling. The rest, most of the matter in the cosmos, is something else entirely. Something with weight that tugs on galaxies, that bends starlight, and matches nothing on our beautiful list. We've never once held a piece of it. We've only ever felt it pull.
Hold on. If we've never touched it, and it matches nothing we know, how are we even sure it's matter at all? How do we know it isn't just that we've got gravity itself a bit wrong out there?
That's a fair and serious question, and people have chased it hard. Maybe the rule for gravity bends at the edges of galaxies, and there's nothing extra out there to find. It's a real idea, seriously examined. But the weight of the evidence keeps leaning the other way. Because the pull doesn't just tug harder, it clumps, in places of its own, separate from where the visible matter sits. And a mere tweak to the rule of gravity struggles to explain lumps of pull with no shining thing at their center. So most of us come back, a little reluctantly, to the stranger answer. There's stuff out there, real stuff, we just can't see it.
The reluctant answer being the right one, more often than not.
Often enough that you learn to distrust the answer you were quietly hoping for. Nature doesn't much care which of the stories we'd find tidier.
Most of the matter out there is a total stranger to us. We built this gorgeous, complete-looking family of particles over a whole season. And it turns out our family is the minority, the odd ones out. That's a humbling thing to land on after 12 weeks of admiring the family.
It's deeply humbling. But notice something important. This isn't a guess. I know something invisible is out there is the oldest story there is, and you'd be right to press on it. But we're not inventing a mystery to make ourselves feel deep. We can see the pull, plain as anything. Galaxies spinning in a way that should tear them apart. Light bending where there's nothing visible to bend it. The evidence that something is there is overwhelming, and it's everywhere you look. It's the what, not the whether. And the what is an empty box. We're certain of the pull and completely blank on the puller.
And that's what the tank under the mountain is for, to catch the puller in the act, to coax one single piece of it into bumping one single atom, just the once. So, has it worked? Has anything ever tapped on the glass?
Not yet. We've built these exquisitely quiet rooms, in mine shafts, under mountains, all over the world, and we've been sitting in them for years now, saying to the dark, ever so politely, "Would you please, just once, touch something we can see?" And so far, the dark has said nothing back, not one confirmed word. Every year the rooms get quieter, the nets get finer, the eyes get sharper. And every year, so far, the same answer comes home to us. Silence.
Years of silence. That would break most people.
And yet the rooms are all staffed again tonight. Somebody decided the silence itself was worth listening to, that an absence, patiently measured, is its own kind of answer.
And that silence, does it mean we've got it wrong, that there's nothing down there to find at all, and we've spent years listening to our own ears ring?
It might mean we've been fishing with the wrong kind of net, that the dark is real, but shyer or stranger than any of our first guesses. It might mean we're achingly close and simply haven't turned over the right stone yet. What it can't mean is that the pull isn't there, because the galaxies still spin wrong, the light still bends where nothing should bend it. The stuff is out there. We just haven't yet caught it saying its own name. And I won't dress that up prettier than it is. That's genuinely where we stand, listening hard and nothing coming back.
There's something almost lonely in that when I sit with it. A room full of people and machines, straining with everything they've got to hear one word from most of the universe. And most of the universe just not answering.
There's a loneliness in it, yes. But turn it over in your hand a moment. The fact that we can even pose the question this sharply, that we can weigh the universe, find most of it missing from our list, and build a room quiet enough to feel for the missing part, and know, cleanly, that we haven't found it yet, that isn't lonely. That's astonishing. We have drawn the outline of our own ignorance. We know the shape of the thing we don't know. And that, historically, is the first step of every hunt that ever, in the end, succeeded.
I like that. The shape of what we don't know. It's a strange kind of map, though. A map that's mostly blank, with a very sharp coastline around the blank part.
That's a lovely way to put it. A map of a country nobody's walked, drawn entirely from its shoreline. And that's the true state of the frontier tonight. We can trace the coast with real confidence. This much weight, pulling here, clumped like so. But step off the shore, inland, into what the stuff actually is, and the map goes white. No roads, no towns, just the plain word every old map maker wrote across the empty middle. Here, we do not yet know.
So that's the first dream then, find out what the dark actually is. Concrete, ongoing, unfinished. But you said dreams, plural. You said that behind all the hunts there's an older one, older than any machine. What on earth is older than the question of what the dark is made of?
The dream that all of this, all the mess, all the separate pieces, is secretly far simpler than it looks. Cast your mind back a few weeks to the night we found where the forces come from. The symmetry night, when I showed you the forces weren't just bolted onto the world by hand. We stumbled onto something quietly staggering there. Each force grows up out of a symmetry, a kind of deep evenness woven into nature. And the moment you've truly seen that, you can't help but ask a rather dangerous question.
Which is?
If every force grows up out of a symmetry, Then what if they all grow out of the same one? What if the forces we count off on our fingers, the one that lights the stars, the one that binds the heart of every atom, the one that makes an apple fall, aren't really separate things at all? What if they're one single force wearing several different masks, and we've simply been fooled all this time by the costumes?
Fooled by costumes? That's a bold thing to accuse the universe of.
It's the boldest bet in all of physics, and yet the universe has already been caught in that exact costume once. So it isn't quite as reckless as it first sounds.
One force in several different coats. That's a lovely thought, George, but it sounds an awful lot like poetry to me. Why would anyone actually believe the forces are secretly one thing when they plainly look and behave so utterly differently from one another?
Because it has happened before, and that's the thing that keeps every physicist awake at night. Go back to two forces that people once swore had nothing whatever to do with one another: electricity and magnetism. One of them in the lightning and the crackle of a spark, the other in the lodestone and the wandering compass needle. Completely unrelated, anyone would have told you, hand on heart. And then Maxwell came along and showed they were two faces of a single thing, that electricity and magnetism are one force, and we'd merely been squinting at it from two different angles. And he didn't only wed them, he found light itself hiding inside the marriage. Two became one, and the one turned out to be the light we see the world by.
And that's not just tidiness, is it? That's not merely two shorter columns in a ledger folded into one.
It's far more than tidiness. It's the deepest kind of profit there is. Every time two mysteries turn out to be one mystery, the world you have to explain gets smaller. You were carrying two riddles, now you carry one, and the one is simpler than either. That's what unification really buys you. Not neatness, but fewer separate things the universe has to be. And once you've felt that, once you've watched two whole forces collapse into a single one and seen the light fall out as a bonus, you start to suspect the world is far simpler underneath than it ever lets on at the surface.
Fewer things to be. That's the real prize then.
The real prize. One law where there were several. One story where there were many. We don't know that the universe is that kind, underneath, but oh, we would love it to be.
So there's genuine precedent for it. It isn't only a hope, it's a thing that actually, verifiably happened, once. Two forces that looked like total strangers turned out, underneath, to be the same animal wearing two skins.
And not only the once. In our own time, two more of the forces were shown to fold together into a single thing as well. The one behind light and electricity, and a shy one hiding down inside the nucleus. Down here where everything's cold, they wear two faces and look like two forces. Up there where it's blazing hot, where the energies climb high enough, they're one and the same. So we've now watched this happen more than once. Forces we would have sworn on our lives were separate, quietly folding together the higher you climb. And once you've seen a pattern like that, you cannot make yourself unsee it.
And climbing up in energy. That's really climbing back toward the beginning, isn't it? Back toward that opening blaze you told me about.
It's the same staircase, only walked the other way. Run the film of the universe backward, toward that first furnace, and the forces we see as separate today begin to melt back into each other. The higher and hotter you go, the fewer distinct forces there are to count. So every time we drive a machine to a fiercer energy, we're climbing a few steps back up toward that heat, and watching, hopefully, for two forces to shrug off their separate costumes and step out in front of us as one. We've already watched it happen. The whole dream is only that it keeps happening, all the way up the stairs.
So the dream becomes just keep climbing, keep going up in energy, and one by one, the forces you thought were separate keep merging, until at some unimaginable height, they'd all fall back into a single force. The way, perhaps, they all were together, once, at the very beginning of things.
That's the dream in a single breath, that if you could only climb high enough, far higher than any machine we could ever dream of building, the forces would all run back together into one. A single law from which everything else simply unfolds as the young universe cools and the masks come out. People call it, when they let themselves dream it aloud, a grand unification. And I want to be careful with you here because this part matters more than almost anything else tonight. That final merging, all of them into one, has not been done. Nobody has shown that it's true. It's a dream with real reasons standing behind it, and it is still, tonight, only a dream.
A dream. You keep landing hard on that one word.
I have to. It's the most seductive dream we own, and the seductive ones are exactly where you keep both feet planted on the floor.
But a dream with a track record, surely. 2 forces became 1, and then 2 more became 1. So it isn't madness to hope the rest of them will fall into line eventually. Why not just build the machine, climb the energy, and check?
It isn't madness at all. It might be the least mad hope in all of physics. But a hope isn't a proof, and a pattern isn't a promise. And here's the cruelty of it. The forces we've already united gave up their secret the moment we could reach the energy that revealed it. This last union, if it's even real, hides at an energy so staggeringly far beyond us that we may never build the machine that could force it out into the open. So we chase it sideways instead, with cleverness. Little clues, faint fingerprints. The hope that the grand union, if it's up there, leaves some small footprint down here in the cold, where we can actually kneel and look.
All right, that's the dream of pulling the forces into one. But there's a force you keep quietly leaving off the list every single time you say the forces might merge. The obvious one, George, the one holding me down in this chair as we speak.
You've caught me out. I keep saying the forces, and quietly meaning only the small handful that live inside the quantum world, the ones we can write down in the same language. Gravity. Gravity is the outsider, the one force you felt every single second of your life, the one that holds you in that chair and holds the earth swinging round the sun. And it is the one force we have never once managed to bring into the fold at all.
The one force we've all felt, and the one we can't place.
The most familiar thing in your whole life, and the one physics understands least of all. There's a strange humility waiting in that, if you sit with it a moment.
We talked about this last week. Gravity's simply not in the model. But tell me why it's so hard. The other forces, you fitted them into the quantum picture well enough. So why does gravity of all of them fight you so stubbornly?
Because gravity isn't quite like the others, right down in its bones. Newton first wrote it down as a pull between masses, an invisible cord strung between the Earth and the falling apple. And then Einstein went deeper still and showed it isn't a pull reaching across space at all. It's the bending of space and time themselves. Matter tells space how to curve. The curve of space turns around and tells matter how to move. It may be the most beautiful picture we have of anything, but it's a picture of a smooth, continuous, flowing stage. Space and time without a single seam in them. And the quantum world.
The quantum world isn't smooth.
The quantum world is grainy, jittery, restless, uncertain, never quite willing to sit still. Ask those two pictures to share one room, and they start screaming at each other.
The smooth and the grainy. The flowing stage on one side, the jittering quantum restlessness on the other. And they simply refuse to shake hands.
They refuse. Push them together anyway. Try to ask what gravity is doing at the very tiniest scales, down where the quantum jitter can no longer be politely ignored. And the equations stop handing you answers. They hand you nonsense instead. Infinities. The mathematics throws up its hands and walks out of the room. Every other force let us write a quantum version of itself, more or less gracefully. Gravity so far flatly refuses to be written that way.
And where would that clash actually bite, in practice? If gravity and the quantum only ever come to blows in some far-off corner nobody visits, maybe we could just learn to live with the wall between them.
We could for almost everything, and mostly, in fact, we do. The trouble is that the corners where it bites are the most important places there are. Think of the first instant of the universe, when everything there was got crushed into something smaller than a speck, tiny and unthinkably heavy both at once. Or the crushed heart of a fully collapsed star, where matter falls past the point of no return and keeps on falling. Those are the places where something is small enough for the quantum jitter and heavy enough for the bending of space at the same time. So the two languages both have to speak there, and they fall silent, contradicting each other. The wall runs directly through the questions we most want answered.
Of course it does. It always runs right through the good part.
Always through the good part, never politely off to one side where we could ignore it. It sits square across the one doorway we most want to walk through.
And how big a deal is that, really? One force out of a small handful, still holding out. Does it keep you up at night?
It's the single deepest unsolved problem in all of physics, to a great many of us. So yes, because think about what it would take to fix. How do you write one language, one single story, that can speak for the very largest things and the very smallest, both at the same time? Right now we've got two. For the big, the stars, the galaxies, the slow bending of space, we use Einstein's picture, and it is flawless, tested to the hilt, never once caught out. For the small, the particles, the forces, we use the quantum picture, and that is flawless too. Each one on its own is a towering triumph, but they're written in different tongues.
And somewhere, the two of them have to meet.
At the one place they truly have to meet, something incredibly small and incredibly heavy, where both pictures matter at once, they flatly contradict each other. And nobody, in 100 years of hard trying, has managed to write the sentence that reconciles the two.
100 years of trying. And you told me, before we started tonight, that Einstein himself went chasing after this very thing.
He did. He spent the last long stretch of his life, after he'd already turned the world over twice, chasing a single theory that would pull the whole of it together. One law lying under everything. He worked at it and worked at it, year after year. And he died without ever finding it. And that isn't a sad story, though it dresses up like one. The finest mind of his age reached out for this exact dream, gave it his final years, and did not get there. And nobody has in all the time since. The door is still shut. It may be the most important shut door there is anywhere in science.
But people are trying to open it, surely. Someone, somewhere, must have a leading idea by now, a best guess at what's on the other side.
Many people, down many different roads, with real ingenuity and real mathematics. And I'm not going to stand here and crown one of them for you tonight. Not because I'm being coy, because nobody has earned that crown. Every one of those roads is a serious, genuine attempt at the sentence no one has yet managed to write, and not a single one of them has been shown to be the true one. So I'll give you the plain state of it instead. The door is shut, a great many gifted people are pushing on it from different sides, and we genuinely do not yet know which push, if any of them, will be the one that finally swings it open.
No crown. I notice you rather enjoyed not handing one out.
More than I probably should have. But it's the truest thing I can offer you tonight. An open door deserves an open mind, not a favourite.
You called it something before we started rolling. The Great Unfinished. What was the word?
The Great Unfinished Cathedral. That's genuinely how it feels to me. You know how the old cathedrals took so many lifetimes to raise that the people who laid the foundation stones went to their graves without ever seeing the spire. Generation after generation working on the one building, each of them carrying it a little higher, none of them alive to see it topped out. Quantum gravity is a bit like that, whole lifetimes of the finest minds we have, laying stones toward a building not one of them will ever get to stand inside. And here's the thing I have to be straight with you about, plainly. We don't have the blueprint. We don't secretly know how it ends and keep it in a locked drawer.
And that's the straight talk you kept promising me all season. No blueprint in the drawer.
No blueprint in the drawer? Let me say it as plainly as I know how, because it's the beating heart of tonight. Everything I've laid in front of you, what the dark matter is, whether the forces are secretly one thing, how on earth to bring gravity into the quantum fold. Not one of these is secretly solved. We aren't sitting on the answers, teasing you along. The dark really is dark. The dream really is a dream. And I could stand here and dress it all up, hint that we're right on the verge, that the breakthrough's just around the next corner. That would make a far better story. It would also be a lie.
And you'd sooner hand me the true story than the better one.
Every single time. Because here's what I've come to believe after a whole season of this. The not knowing isn't a hole in the story. It isn't the embarrassing part we're meant to hurry past with our eyes down. It is the story. A science brave enough to stand up and say, we don't know. And here, look, is the precise shape of what we don't know. That isn't a science that has failed at anything. That's a science still alive, still moving, with its best chapters not yet written. The empty boxes aren't where physics stops dead. They're the places where it's still breathing.
I think that might be the thing I had wrong about science before this season. I always pictured it as a great pile of answers, a big, heavy book of settled facts.
Most of us are taught it that way, as the answers, bound and finished and handed down. But the answers are only the part that has cooled and set hard. The living edge of the thing, the part that's actually moving, is all questions. A bright rim of open, unanswered questions with people leaning out over them in the dark. And the settled book is real, and it is magnificent, don't mistake me. But every last page of it was written by somebody who once sat right at that unsettled edge and refused to look away from the blank part.
So the whole book was written from the edge.
Every page of it. Nobody ever added a single line from the comfortable middle. It all came from the rim, in the dark.
And it isn't only the big three, is it? Even the ghost, the neutrino, is still half a riddle. Why its mass is so absurdly, awkwardly small. Whether it had some hand in why there's anything here at all instead of nothing.
Even the ghost. Little open doors standing ajar everywhere you look, the moment you're willing to see them. Why the neutrino weighs almost nothing at all. Why the world came out made of matter rather than an equal measure of its mirror twin, which would have met the matter and cancelled it all clean away to light. Why the numbers are the numbers they are, and not some others. None of it settled. The picture we built together this season is a spectacular thing, and it is riddled, gorgeously, top to bottom, with things we cannot yet explain. That's not the theory failing us. That's the theory pointing.
Then, before we say goodnight to all of it, do one thing with me, George. Not a week-by-week march back through everything. Please, I don't want the recap. Just look back with me, once, all the way to the start. Where did we actually begin this season? What did the world look like on the very first night, before any of this?
On the very first night, we stood together in front of a zoo. Do you remember it? A bewildering crowd of particles, dozens upon dozens of them, spilling out of the machines with strange names and no order to them whatsoever. A mess, frankly. It looked for all the world as if nature had emptied a great drawer of odd, unmatched socks out onto the floor and dared us to make sense of the pile. That is where we began, just standing there, staring at chaos, with not the faintest reason to believe there was any order hiding underneath it at all.
A zoo? a drawer of odd socks, and then, night by night, we started prizing up the floor of the thing.
And underneath the chaos, order. Breathtaking order. We dug down and found that the teeming crowd is built from a small handful of ingredients. A few genuinely tiny building blocks, arranged and rearranged over and over. We found that the forces holding it all together aren't a jumble of arbitrary rules, but grow, every one of them, out of symmetry. We found that mass itself gets handed out by a field that fills every last corner of empty space. And underneath even the particles, we found that each one is really a ripple, a stirring, a note struck in something deeper, a field running quietly through all of everything. The zoo turned out to be music, played on very, very few instruments.
Music, out of a drawer of odd socks.
Out of a drawer of odd socks. If I could keep only one sentence from the whole season, it might well be that one.
From a drawer of odd socks to a few instruments and the music they make. That's the distance we came this season. That's the whole climb, right there.
That's the distance. And I don't want to undersell it for a second. That's one of the great climbs the human mind has ever made, in any field. From, what on earth is all this mess, to, here are the few deep things it's all quietly made of. We went from the zoo all the way down to the order living under the zoo. That's real. That actually happened, and we got to walk through it together. We got to stand, this season, right on top of one of the highest things anybody has ever built.
But,
and tonight is the but, isn't it? Because standing right up on top of that climb, that's the spot from which you can finally see the other half of the truth. How much sky is still above us? The dark we can't name, the forces we can't quite join into one, the gravity we can't bring home. We climbed higher than anyone ever had before, and from up there, the view is of how staggeringly much further there still is to go. Both halves true at the same instant. Look how far we came, and look how far there is still left.
and I think that's the thing I'll actually carry out of this whole season, George. Not that we've finished it, that we got far enough up to see how gloriously unfinished it all still is. Which somehow makes the thing bigger, not smaller.
Bigger, not smaller. Yes. So then, let me end this where all of it truly started. Not this season, I mean. The whole enterprise. Physics itself. Long, long before the machines and the mountains and the tanks waiting in the dark. It started more or less with a child's toys. Someone rubs a comb on their sleeve and lifts a little scrap of paper up with it, out of nowhere, and wonders why on earth it did that. Someone watches specks of dust drift and turn and dance in a shaft of afternoon sunlight, and wonders what keeps them dancing.
A comb and a bit of torn paper, dust turning in the light. The simplest things imaginable. You could do either one right now at your own kitchen table.
You could, tonight, at your own table. And from those, from a comb and a scrap of paper, from a single mote of dust that wouldn't hold still, we followed the questions down. Down past the everyday, down into the atom, down past the atom into its heart, down past the heart into the tiny, restless things inside it, down and further down, all the way to this, the deepest layer we can currently see, the few quiet instruments the song is being played on. And that entire enormous descent began with one person lifting a scrap of paper with a comb and simply refusing to stop asking why.
And every single layer down was somebody refusing to accept that the last one was the end of the story.
Every one of them. Somebody was handed the atom as the final, uncuttable thing. The name itself was chosen to mean cannot be cut, and quietly asked anyway, well, but what's inside it? And then, when we found things inside, someone did the very same to those. Each floor was solemnly declared the bottom, in its day, by perfectly reasonable people, and each time One stubborn soul knelt down on it, felt around for a seam, and found the trapdoor. That's the history of this, told in a single gesture. Somebody kneeling down on what everyone else swore blind was the floor.
The deepest layer we can currently see. You're leaning an awful lot of your weight on that one little word, currently.
I'm leaning everything I have on it. Because here is the most thrilling part of the night, and I saved it back on purpose, for last. This deepest layer is almost certainly not the bottom. There isn't a single sign that we've struck rock. Every time in all of history that we've been sure we'd finally found the last floor, the atom surely, then no, the things inside the atom, then no, the things inside those, the floor turned out to have a trapdoor in it and another whole room waiting underneath. There is, almost certainly, more floor below this floor. We just can't see through it yet.
More floor below the floor. That really ought to be frightening.
It ought to be. And somehow it's the opposite. A floor with no bottom isn't a trap. It's an invitation that simply never runs out.
So the story doesn't actually end at all. It just reaches the edge of what we're able to see, and it stops there, for now.
It stops there for now, and then it waits, patiently, for whoever comes to look next. That's what a frontier really is, in the end. Not a wall, a shoreline. The story doesn't end tonight, and it won't end with us either. It just passes on, to the next people patient enough to sit beside a tank in the dark, or clever enough to hear a whisper the rest of us can't, or lucky enough to be the one still looking on the night the dark finally decides to answer. It changes hands, that's all. The story just goes on.
Which brings us, I suppose, round to the hard part, the actual goodbye. We've come to the end of it, George, the whole season, all the way down to the edge of the known and back. And there's someone who came the entire way there with us.
The someone who matters most of all. Whoever you are, listening on a train, or standing at the sink washing up, or lying in the dark with the light already off, you gave us a whole season of your attention, which is the one thing not a single one of us ever gets any more of. You let two voices walk you down, week after week, through the hidden layers of the world. Thank you. Truly, we don't take it lightly, either of us, that you came all this way down here with us.
We really, really don't. You could have spent those hours of yours on absolutely anything else in the world, and you chose to spend them down here, in among the quarks and the forces and the dark, with the two of us. That means more than either of us quite knows how to say.
And maybe there's one last wonder in it before we go, bigger than any of the ones we chased all season. You are made of these very things, the particles, the forces, the field that quietly hands out mass. That's not some distant lecture topic, that's your own body, your own hands holding whatever it is you're holding right now. And for a whole season, that particular arrangement of particles, you, turned itself around and asked what it was made of.
The part of the universe that looks back at itself, dust that somehow learned to sit up and ask what it's made of. I think I'll carry that one a long time.
Dust that learned to ask. And the asking isn't finished. That's the very last thing I want to leave sitting here in the room with us. The tanks are still down in the dark tonight, watching. The machines are still humming away in the quiet. Somewhere, right now, someone is still sitting the vigil, waiting for the flash that may never come. The hunt goes on without us tonight, and there's always a next layer, always a next season of questions waiting. We just don't get to know yet what they'll turn out to be. The story isn't over. It never quite is.
Then say goodnight to them properly, George. Just this once. The last time.
Good night, then. Keep looking up at the dark sky and down past the floor of ordinary things, and don't ever quite lose the habit we started all of this with. A comb, a scrap of paper, and the plain refusal to stop wondering why. It has been the great pleasure of my life to walk you all the way down here, Thank you truly for the company. Alice, the last word of the whole season is yours, as it always has been.
Good night, George. And good night to you, the one who came all this way down with us. We started at a zoo we couldn't make the first bit of sense of, and we've ended right here, at the edge of the known, looking out at all the dark sky we still haven't climbed. And that isn't an ending, not really. That's an invitation. The universe is out there in the quiet, waiting to be asked, and there will always be someone brave enough and curious enough to sit in the dark and wait for it to answer. Maybe, one day, it'll be you. Until then, keep wondering. From both of us, from all the way down here at the deepest layer we can currently see, good night.